Start to pray.
So, welcome and thank you for joining the Taking Care of Business podcast. We would like to open with a word of prayer. Pastor, would you like to give the prayer? Thank you.
Yeah, Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for everyone that you have put around us and giving us the gift of life and good health to be here. We pray that as we have this podcast and we have these conversations, that you channel it to the right place and the right people listen to this and good changes are made in the American community. In Jesus' name, pray. Amen.
Amen. So, today our special guest for our Academic Avenue two-part podcast series is Mr. Stephen Adedara, soon to be Dr. Adedara.
Yes.
So, I've entitled this podcast Academic Avenue because we will bring two scholars who are also educators into this space to talk about their work and some of the issues in the education field that affect all communities and maybe disproportionately affect Black communities. So my name is Cris Houstn. I'm a native Houstonian. I also currently reside in Waco now. I am a law professor, attorney, public servant, and nonprofit executive director. It's my distinct pleasure to host this podcast and bring you what I believe to be relevant and helpful information, some of which will be unique to Waco and McLennan County, and some of which will be relevant to people in other cities and states. Thank you, Pastor Carlton Stimson, for making this podcast possible and giving us a platform to serve our community. So today we have Mr. Adedara with us. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for that prayer. We always want to invite God into the space and hope that he will speak through us and amplify our efforts and our reach. So everyone, I had the privilege of reading Mr. Adedara's opinion ed article, which was published in the Houstn Chronicle, right?
Yeah.
And the article is entitled, America's Civic Literacy Crisis. Are we losing the foundation of our democracy? And why we need to prioritize civic education. So to me, this enlightening opinion editorial will be the subject of today's podcast because I hope that you learn as much as I did, but more importantly, that you are inspired to think and to act as much as I was after hearing from Mr. Adedara on his thoughts and insights on civic education. So as we work to connect our community with access to much needed resources, which is the primary purpose of this podcast, we will kick off this two-part series with education-related topics because education is, in my opinion, the chief resource that we need to thrive and to access all the other necessary resources in our society. So I'm pleased to introduce our special guest, Mr. Stephen Adedara, an outstanding educator who is currently pursuing his PhD in curriculum and instruction at Baylor University. And this, I may mess this up, so correct me if I have it wrong. But upon his graduation next year, he will be the first Black person to obtain a PhD of this sort in his department at Baylor University. Is that right?
Yes, the first Black male person.
Black male.
Yeah.
So you mean a woman did it first?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, yeah. Dr. Karinisia O'Connor was the first graduate at Baylor University, Black person.
But still, there will only be two before him. And then in our next podcast, we will meet someone who will be the third Black person and second Black male, Mr. Joshua Jonas, to achieve this distinction. And so we need to send some more Black folks over to Baylor to get their PhDs in curriculum and education is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So what an honor, Mr. Adedara, and a tremendous gift to Baylor School of Education.
Well, thank you for having me, Cris. As hello, listeners, as you can hear from my voice, I'm not American. I'm Nigerian, but I'm very passionate about education and how it operates in the Black community in the United States. So I'm looking forward to what we're about to discuss today. And thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So he's an up-and-coming scholar with many publications, scholarly presentations, and other accomplishments under his belt. So it will be good for us to pay attention and listen to what he has to share today. So I'm thankful to you for coming, and without further ado, let's get to it. Please tell us about yourself and what inspired you to seek a career in teaching and then in academia.
So, I am from the southwestern part of Nigeria. Nigeria is in the western part of Africa. So, I grew up in a family of teachers, health
Which is,
education. Yeah.
what is PhD?
So that's physical and health education, the
Okay.
people you would call coaches,
Okay.
in high schools. So growing up, we had newspapers everywhere in our house. We listened to the news all the time. And my dad always talked about the importance of government, the importance of governance, and the importance of being active participants in governing. So from the beginning, I knew what it meant to be a citizen. It wasn't just about voting and paying your taxes, and it's more than that. It's about holding government accountable and also understanding how government works,
Right.
how the judiciary system of government works, how the executive works, how the legislature works, and how we can write letters to our congressmen, how we can push them to do better, how we can stand up for community partners and community initiatives. So, yeah, that's my background, and I'm a very proud educator.
Thank you. So you said in your article, and we will get more into the crux of the article shortly for our listeners. But in your article, you said that you grew up in Nigeria as a child of a social studies teacher.
Yeah.
How specifically did that shape your perspective on civic literacy and education in the classroom, and why we need it in the classroom?
Yes, when you look at how education is in the US and globally as well, the importance of civic education and the importance of being a citizen in general has changed. If you look at during the Cold War in the United States, focus shifted from social studies, focus shifted from communalship to the idea of us competing with other parts of the world. Who goes to the moon first? Who makes rocket launches first? And then who were the front runners of science? So it was a competition between the United States and Russia. So the government focused more on mathematics, on STEM programs, and you see that still happening today.
And for the listeners who are not educators, what is the STEM acronym for?
So the STEM, STEM, means science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Right.
So so you see that happening, and till today, it's still happening. When you look at the Black community, because of our African roots, the idea of community, the idea is real. And when that is not a part of the curriculum and not something that is really important, then you see the effect in voting, you see the effect in what happens in the society generally.
Thank you. So, in your article, you described America's literacy crisis as a democratic emergency. Can you please explain first why this issue is so urgent? And secondly, can you give us a brief synopsis of the main points covered in your article?
Yes, when I was writing that article, a lot of things were going through my mind because coming to the United States, I thought things would be different. And because I've always seen the United States as a beacon of hope for an immigrant or for anybody coming in. But what I see is that I see a population that by lies. And when you have a population that politicians can take advantage of by spreading rumors, by saying things that are not true to get votes.
Not just politicians.
I know.
Anybody with a platform.
Absolutely, I agree. But there's power in politics, and there's power when people trust you and when you are a public figure, So when I see that happening, and I don't like commenting about elections.
This is not about that.
Yes, but you see social media platforms being used to push agendas and propaganda
without being grounded in fact.
Yes. So when people don't know how to fact check information. And that's one of the problems we have in the social studies curriculum.
Do they even know the difference between fact and opinion to know that they should fact check that thing that they have been told?
That's one of the problems, and the social studies curriculum that we have in the United States today focuses more on, trivial things about being a citizen, things that everybody know that, oh, yeah, of course, as a citizen, you have to be patriotic. As a citizen, you have to be this, you have to be that. But it's more than that. Digital literacy is also part of being a good citizen. Being able to fact check.
Literacy?
Yes, being able to fact check information before you spread it around is a form of being a good citizen.
It.
Yes, absolutely. So I wrote that article when I saw what happened in the last election, and I see to a large extent how the American public can still be easily misinformed. And
we are going to steer clear from that election topic a little.
Yes.
Because we're neutral, nonpartisan.
Yeah.
But I also think that with or without elections, if you just look at how people make decisions, how people or choose what beliefs they will have, or what food they will eat, or what clothes they will buy, or what football team they will support. Usually, those decisions are not made the same way that they were in prior generations, because we have more access to information in this country, but we seem to be less intellectually curious, and we seem to place a lower priority on education and self-educating once you are no longer in K through 12 or college. And so we choose things based on information in air quotes that isn't necessarily sound and doesn't necessarily come from a sound source, because anybody can put up a website, anybody can put up a social media channel, and none of what they put on that website or channel has to actually be grounded in fact for them to get over 1 million viewers or readers.
Yes, even when you look at how the government itself works, there was a survey in 2020 that was done about the knowledge of Americans about how government works. And just 36% of Americans were able to differentiate between the duties of Republicans, executive, and judiciary. So they
didn't even know what the different functions of the three branches of government?
Absolutely.
30?
Just
only a third of us?
Yes.
I better get to work.
Yeah. So that tells you how much.
I'm astounded.
I mean, that
or disgusted.
Yes.
I don't know which one to
yeah,
say.
but it's true, and that tells you how much we don't lay emphasis on that part of the society. Because if we do, and if we start from K to 12 and we make it more important for the public, then what happens is that you have a very, very educated population that cannot be deceived easily, that know how things work. And so that's why I wrote the article. Yeah.
Thank you for ruining my day with that horrible statistic. But I have another question for you. Why do you think civic education has been sidelined in schools? And by that, I really mean removed from the curriculum in Texas public schools, which I can speak of. And what are the broader implications of this gap in knowledge in our society? Because I would like to put that removal of civic education that is a required component, like math, like science, like history, like English, like physical education, that has been removed from our curriculum for decades. I remember learning civics. I was in the 7th or 8th grade. I remember the little textbook. It had an American flag on it. But I also remember the news reports when coming out when that part of the curriculum in public schools in Texas was being removed, because there was a big brouhaha around it. Some people fought it, but of course they were in the minority, and it was removed from the curriculum, and it has been the case for decades. So why do you think that was done? And what are the broader implications of this gap in knowledge in our society?
So the question you ask is that what is the incentive of making civic education a priority?
That's one way to put it.
There is no incentive. There is very little.
So why do you think it was done? Start the cooking class at the beginning with boiling water. Why was there an effort, in your opinion, or either based on the research that you have seen, to remove civic education from the schools, at least I can speak to public schools, because that curriculum has to be approved by the state Texas Education Agency.
Because
what is the why?
And this is my opinion. So from research that I've seen over the years.
What is an opinion?
So there are some subjects in K-12 that are very, very nuanced, that are very, very complex. And there are some subjects,
such as,
like civic education, for example, or history.
Okay.
And there are some subjects that are very straightforward, like mathematics, like chemistry, that they cannot be used for any sort of agenda, if you will. So when those kind of subjects that can be bent for agenda, leaders and politicians will do whatever they want to do to make it, reflect the ideologies. And that's the fact. And one fact about curriculum is that curriculum is ideological, whether you like it or not.
Really?
It reflects ideologies of
the society,
of the society, of the current, leadership in governance.
Or just in that school, or in that the Texas Education Agency.
Yes, because curriculum is very powerful. It's something you can use to control people's minds and make people,
or broaden.
Yes, or broaden people's mind as well.
I'm an optimist.
It is. You are an optimist, but we're talking about why it's been removed and it's under attack over the years. So,
and what are the broader implications of this gap in knowledge in our society?
Obviously, you see it every day. You see how America, for example, is very, very removed away from other parts of the world. I mean,
how so?
I don't mean to be,
don't.
to sound.
No, don't.
To sound.
Skip that part.
But when.
Because I am American.
when the Yankees.
Oh Lord.
When the Yankees win the baseball series, they call it the World Series. Is it really the World Series?
No, not at all.
Yeah, it's the American series.
But who's talking about y'all's World Cup?
Because it's played by the whole world. So,
well, maybe so. I think you might be right. Never mind.
And then, I remember when last year, I think, was the Boston Celtics won the NBA championship. The Boston Celtics were called the champions of the world.
Well, America is a bit egomaniacal.
So that's
even to our detriment, in that I've not been to a single country outside the U.S., and I've been to a number of them, where people can consider themselves fully educated, even with 1 or 2 college degrees, and they are not at least bilingual, if not multilingual. Because in our system, learning English is the main priority, and that is being done to our detriment, especially when we consider that this is a global society now. And I know that you speak other languages, and so I think the egomaniacal nature of our society has bled into our education system in ways that harm us as individuals. So as a lawyer, one of the things that struck me when I read your article is this. My modern day Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is an attorney from my alma mater, Harvard Law School, named Brian Stevenson. And he is a civil rights lawyer and activist who has founded the Equal Justice Initiative.
Yeah.
And Brian Stevenson said that his advocacy that he was doing in the courts and in the legislature would not achieve the change that he sought to achieve for this one reason. He said that if a decision like Brown versus the Board of Education, which ended legal segregation in the United States, had to be considered by the Supreme Court or civil rights legislation had to be passed, it wouldn't today. For a reason that is akin to what you're speaking of, and that is the American population is not sufficiently educated about our history and our current circumstances, so they would not see the issues that were blatant in the United States in the 50s and in the 60s as issues today. They would probably see them as a thing of the past that needed no legal remedy. And the through line from slavery or genocide of the Native Generation and all these other things isn't obvious to everyone. And so he founded two museums. You would appreciate that as a social studies expert. But he founded the Museum for Peace and Justice, which is, from what I can see, like another African American history museum. It's very similar to the other ones I've been to. And he also founded the Lynching Memorial.
Yes, I know about that.
To inform America of the history of lynching in this country. And when I think of some of the negative consequences of removing the civics courses that were required from the curriculum, I go back to what he said. One of the things that has bothered me is how many people sit at home, not just during national elections, when we're electing when we are voting for federal elected officials, but city, state, county. And I don't think that those people are sitting at home and refusing to understand that their vote is their voice simply because they want to act in ways that are detrimental to them. I think they don't understand the consequences of the choice.
That's true. You see it today in America. To just round up my answer to your question, you see that take immigration issues, for example, now.
Do we really want to?
I mean,
right now?
Yeah. Honestly, it's
a sensitive topic.
It is, yeah. But when you look at, if civic education had been taught well or had been available to the public very well in the right way, then Americans would become, in some ways, and a lot of Americans are very empathetic, with situations across the world, outside the United States.
Because of knowledge.
Yeah, but the idea that we don't need anybody, and the idea that
anybody else.
Yeah, we don't need anybody else, and we can be self-reliant is also as a result of how it's been taught, how civics is being taught. The idea that being American means automatically you're superior or you're on top of the world. Automatically it makes you see other culture or other language, or people don't look like you, or people don't talk like you, as different or inferior. So global citizenship is very important. And if we can do that, then we have an America that is more compassionate, that is better, and the electoral system will also benefit from it as well.
Thank you. So let's move to another topic that is of interest to you and that you focus on in your scholarship, and that's community engagement. And I want to focus within that topic on the importance of community engagement in our Black community. And if it is possible to drill it down a little more, community engagement in our Black communities here in Waco. My roots in Waco are in East Waco. East Waco is still and has always been the predominantly Black community, and therefore the most under-resourced and underserved. And my relatives, my mom grew up there, my relatives still live there. And so that it's important to me. That part of Waco is important to me. So what does civic education mean to a Black child or adult? Because we know that schools have not been teaching it for so long that we have adults now who lack this knowledge. What does it mean to them?
So this is the US for about 3 years, doing research in Black communities, but it's more of what I see in research and Black scholars have talked about over the years. So the Black child sees civic education or being an American, what it means to be a citizen of America, in a different way from a white child. So the idea is that there's a level of mistrust between the Black community and governance a lot of times. And what civic education tells you in the United States is that God bless America, a land full of bright opportunities, a declaration of independence, pursuit of happiness, and all the yada that the founding fathers have talked about. But how many of Black people were those promises made for at the beginning? If when you look at the Declaration of Independence at the beginning, it was initially meant for other people, not slaves. You know, the freedom of equal rights, that everybody is created equally under God, was not meant for slaves initially. It was after the abolition of slavery that you can see Black people being put into that conversation as that, considered as human beings as well. So, and largely to today, we still see some elements of that because the curriculum tells you that we got you, the states got you. You know, you got medical, whatever you need from the state, and you enjoy a good life as an American. You pay your taxes. But who are the ones being killed in the streets of Chicago? So if you are telling me these things in the classroom,
in the streets of Waco,
you know, telling me these things in the classroom, and I'm expressing something else in the society, then then I'm not bound to listen to you in the classroom. So the curriculum is not meant for me.
It doesn't reach us because it's not relatable and in line with our lived experiences.
Yes,
it's kind of contrary to some of our lived experiences.
Yes. So you don't. So then, I don't feel safe. I don't feel secured by the system. So I see civic education as an idea that there's a system against me and I need to find my way around that system. I need to find my way to having a better life. I need to get out of the hood. I need to get into the MBA, hopefully get a contract, get a life, buy my mama her house. And, you know, I'll be fine and I can give back anything I can. I'll go to college. So that's the idea, the escape mentality. That is what it means to be American.
You're swimming against the current.
Yes.
If you are an African American. I was raised in a household where we didn't use Black as much as we use African American, and I do use them interchangeably. And so you may hear that.
And a lot of my Black friends would tell me that I'm not Black. They tell me that I'm African
American. Yeah. So tell me, in light of some of these challenges that are faced by those in the Black community, how can they be addressed through civic education and or community engagement? How do we take this for ourselves? How do we educate ourselves so that we can use the knowledge that is available to us to help us understand how things work in our society to our benefit and engage civically?
I think for me, the most important thing for me, in my opinion, is celebration. So, and I'm very big about celebrating the culture. So I think the Black community needs to showcase the culture more. I think we have no reason to be ashamed of the culture. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine about when Allen Iverson got into the NBA and he had cornrows on him, and people said a lot of bad things about how he's a thug.
Not just cornrows, tattoos.
And tattoos, how he's a thug and everything like that. But then when you see white people also doing the same thing, then it becomes sort of normalized. Like, oh yeah, I think that we can deal with that. So
back up 1 second. I'm drawing a disconnect between celebrating the culture and the actual technical education of civics education. Yes. Can you connect it, please?
So when you say civics education, what do we mean? We're talking about social studies. We're talking about the society. We're talking
government, about how it works.
Yes.
That's what I mean.
Yes. So when you have a community that naturally is inclined to work together, is inclined to raise a child together, is inclined to live that way, then automatically you have to make the culture central. You have to make the people feel like they can be themselves in the community and ensure that the curriculum speaks to that.
So when you teach the technical aspects of how the government works, you do it with a culturally competent lens.
Yes.
So that the people see themselves, so that they connect as opposed to disengage in the learning process.
Yes. So when they don't disengage and when they feel supported, starting from the curriculum, so automatically they start trusting the system more. So when a black child sits in the classroom and listens to the teacher, and the teacher is giving examples of, voting participation or whatever, and it's showing pictures of people voting, and it's not just pictures of,
it's pictures of
everybody in there. So they start listening more.
They see themselves.
Yes.
They feel that this is something that is for them, that is accessible for them also.
Yes.
So one follow-up question. How can local organizations and educators work together to empower Black communities and compel or encourage the civic literacy as well as the civic participation? Because if the schools are not required to teach our children, maybe then it's a partnership with local educators and organizations, Boys and Girls Clubs, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, churches, et cetera. How can they collaborate to get some of these things done?
I honestly cannot overemphasize the importance of community partnership, especially in Black communities. We need it, and we need more and more and more every day. I read an article about this wonderful lady in Washington, D.C. doing, she had this NGO that helped, like,
we call them nonprofits.
Yeah, nonprofits.
So I'm translating.
Okay, nonprofits that help.
NGO is non-governmental organization.
Yes.
Which would be a nonprofit here.
Yes, that helped Black girls who, during high school, got pregnant and dropped out of school, and helping them find a way back instead of just losing it from there.
You mean like go back to school or get a GED?
Going back to school, getting a GED, learning a trade, and instead of just giving up, So, and it got to a time that she lost funding. She couldn't get funding no more from a source of funding, and it felt like everything was going to collapse. But you know what she did? She started reaching out to other NGOs that other nonprofits. Sorry.
No one except maybe those of us who have studied this will know.
Research,
you're not even using the whole thing.
In research,
they won't know what it is.
In research, we call it NGO. Sorry. Right. So they're reaching out to them and looking for how they have things in common. So nonprofits have things in common. There are a lot of nonprofits that, like, let's take, for example, some of the nonprofits I'm working with, like Art of Texas, Waco, Prosper Waco, like so many of them. Sometimes they don't know they have things in common. Some can be working on house.
They operate in silos.
Yes, some can be working in housing. Some are working on hunger. Some are working on poverty, education. But
separately.
Yeah, but most times they have things in common. Some of the things they have in common is civic advancement. So, but they don't sit and they work in isolation. So if organizations can find a common ground in some ways, not just to come together and eat pizza and talk about what we're doing, but really, really collaborate.
So let me ask
and identify problems that we sort of share, then it makes it easier to advance in the community.
So that's the community engagement and civic participation aspect. But as an educator, speaking to another educator, one of the things that I recognize, and also as a legal educator, one of the things that I recognize is that it's kind of like this thing where I keep saying nonprofit, because I don't think people will know what an NGO is.
Yes.
I'm a member of the NAACP. We do a lot to get voters registered. We do a lot to turn out the vote. But most of the time, we are not as effective as we need to be across the nation because of the lack of education about how, if you want these potholes fixed in your community, if you want sidewalks so that you can exercise and walk your dogs and your kids don't have to fight traffic to walk home from school, if you want better public schools and more funding, if you want cleaner streets and safer communities. If you want your communities to stop being over-policed and feeding this mass incarceration crisis where Black and brown people make up the majority of the prison population in this nation, there are ways to do that by just taking yourself to the polls on election day, or to your school board meetings, or to your city council meetings, or to, like our state legislature is those meetings to make your voice heard. And the process for taking such action, when organizations like the NAACP go out there to try to, we hung voter registration cards on people's doors and went to their houses and put them in their hands. And yet we still see low voter turnout. Is there some kind of collaboration between those of you who have the expertise to craft the curriculum for workshops, classes, training sessions, to work with schools that want to do it, or other organizations that serve youth and adults? What does that even possible? Because I think it is absolutely needed.
But you know why people don't turn up though, right?
No, I just want to know, is it possible to create that curriculum?
Yeah, it is. And I'm just going to roll you back a little bit before I answer that question.
Really?
And people don't turn out because if you keep doing the same thing for years and keep getting the same results, you're going to get tired of it.
That's part of it. But having grown up in this country and in a household with someone who was a precinct judge who woke us up at 4 a.m. to grab all that equipment to set up the polling stations, I will tell you, part of it is that some engaged and they saw no change after they voted, but part of it is that some of them never showed up to vote at all.
I know.
Because they don't understand how the system, the governmental system works, and they don't understand the importance of the vote. Yeah. And I'm saying, as educators, we have the skills to put curriculum, whether it's a 10-slide PowerPoint or it's a whole book or a workbook. We have the resources to put them together, but we are not activating them.
I said it earlier, the curriculum is very ideological. And even as an educator, as a researcher, as a, whatever you are in the space, there's a limit to what you can do. No. So it's always about the curriculum, obviously. And most times people don't just...
But how do you get one?
People don't just get to a certain age and decide that I am conscious about politics. Most times it's as a result of the way you are raised.
And educated, not raised.
That's what I'm saying. Like in the school.
Because some of the parents don't know.
Yeah, and raising.
I mean. Okay. This raising plus this educating. Because the parents can't teach what they don't know.
Yeah, but teachers raise us as well. So so it's
okay.
It's all about how you're educated, like you said, and raised. And like I said
to start young.
About myself. Yes, absolutely. And that's why programs like the Baylor I Engage summer camp that we do is very, very important. So we need more of those kind of programs in the community.
And I think for example, those Know Your Rights cards. That is a curriculum of some sort. It is what you do for us. If the police stop you, what are your rights and how do you protect yourself so you might live to see another day if you get stopped by one of the ones who probably should, you don't want to encounter. In our immigrant communities, they have Know Your Rights cards or pamphlets that tell them what to do if they are stopped by ICE. Yeah. There are so many ways that we can help the organizations, the parents, the churches to do this, but it's not getting done.
The target always still has to be the schools. So it has to be middle school. What if it won't happen in the schools?
I'm saying work there, but add to the effort. Because in Texas, they took that out of the curriculum on purpose. Do we have to accept that?
No, absolutely not. So what we can do, like I said, is collaborating with schools, especially middle schools. But it is not allowed. I'm asking you to accept what I know to be the reality. They removed it. And when they removed it, they packed the curriculum with all these other things. And so
it was sidelined, as you said. So we accept that. What can we do as a workaround or as a stopgap measure? That's what I'm saying.
So if you have a government that is, I'm
I
trying to
wouldn't
be
even
careful.
say government.
I'm
I
trying to
think
be
this
careful.
was something that Texas Education Agency did. It wasn't
Yes.
a governmental decision in Texas. I can only speak for Texas.
Like I said, I'm being careful about what I say, but
Please.
the Texas Education Agency is what? We're talking about, it's not government, but a nonprofit, is it indeed a nonprofit? So anyway, I think the best thing we can do is coming together, especially universities. In many ways, universities have more power to use their voice through paper, through research, and also write more practitioner research papers that teachers can use to, in some ways, because a lot of times teachers still have the power to interpret what's in the curriculum to the students.
But you're still in the schools. I'm asking you to put that aside. What can we do in addition to or apart from that?
What we're already doing as nonprofits,
Okay.
like you talk about sensitization, what we're already doing, collaboration, podcasts,
Working with the academics at the local university.
Yes.
And other organizations. I think Kenneth Starr, who is away Cohen, has a whole program to teach children civics. Is there a way to highlight the need for it and then to get certain people like you to actually envision what community resources are needed apart from what is happening in K through 12, but to some, and something that is sound that they can rely on to actually be of quality to use? Is there a way?
Yes. I talked about the Baylor I Engage, for example, but we're moving outside the classroom, right? So,
but can that be extrapolated to serve different purposes or to be a model for something similar? That is not within the classroom, but that is more broadly within the community?
Yes.
It's how so?
Yes. Automatically, what happens is that when you're doing something like that, it has to be done by people from those certain communities. And
like the NAACP, we have an education committee.
Yes.
So walk me through it.
So
if that was a partner with an organization like I Engage.
So if that's going to happen between NAACP and I Engage, or the organization, and so what you have to do is that you really have to get people on board that really understand what is going on. People that...
Or educate them?
I believe in primary resources. So I believe that you need people who are working in this community. You need pastors, you need reverends, you need community partners, community leaders that are working there. Bring them to the table along with whatever idea you have about civics or whatever you want to do. And ask them what they think about these initiatives. Don't just go in there and say that this is what they need.
You need...
We need civics. We need... So, but what is really going on? How are the people thinking over there? So when you do that, then they point you in the right direction in the community, and you see their needs, you see what they want, you see what they want to hear from you, and in that way we make changes. In that way we educate people more
and design the curriculum
about the importance
that
and
is used
absolutely
specifically or tailored specifically to meet the needs of that community.
Yes,
and we need the people with the expertise in curriculum and design to do it. So I think that's a good place to stop for today. But I hope that we can continue this conversation, because we know that there is a huge need for us as a society, not even just our children, to learn how the government works, which is engaged. And so I thank you for sharing your research and your insights. Is there any parting words that you have, concluding remarks?
Thank you very much for doing this. I just want people to know people listening that being active in the community and understanding what it means to be American, it's beyond the things that you know. The idea of voting and paying your taxes is way more than that. It also includes standing up for what's right. It includes lending your voices to the minoritized people, the people that the weaker people in the community. And in doing that,
The ones without a voice.
yes, in doing that, what happens is that we have a society whereby everybody has a sense of belonging, and everybody can chip in their 2 cents, to the community development. So I just want to say, God bless America.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Nah,